Hello again, and welcome back to another amazing episode of You Make It Happen. On this week's episode, I'm going to be doing a solo show by request. Thank you, audience, listeners. Love to hear from you. And I also love that you love my solo episodes. Thank you. That is so validating for me. It really helps. So let's talk body positivity and body shame, body image issues, and how to combat that. But before we get too far into it, which, as you know, I can get down a rabbit hole real fucking fast, let me thank you for all the love, support, appreciation, nice comments, thoughtful emails. I just appreciate all of y'all. As you know, I can be reached at Missy the Traveler on Instagram, missy.traveler on TikTok, and You Make It Happen podcast at Gmail. If you want, send me your episode requests, send me your questions, send me your topics. I do get to as many as I possibly can. And this episode is by listener request. I have been meaning to get to an episode on body positivity, and as much as I would like a guest on this topic, I figured I would start with doing a solo episode, and then maybe I'll have a guest on in the future. Also, if you can remember, and if you have a moment, please rate and review the podcast. Just a quick rating and a review. The 3 dots on Spotify. I think it's also probably 3 dots on Apple podcasts. If you have a minute to leave it a 5-star review, I appreciate you. I appreciate all the feedback. If you think it's worth 5 stars, please leave that. If you don't, no worries. Send me an email. I am open to constructive criticism. Let's be kind in our words to each other, of course. And it's an even bigger compliment when you share it with your friends or family. Share it with anybody that you think would appreciate it. Absolutely anybody. Somebody's like, oh, I think so-and-so would benefit from hearing this episode. Or, you know what, this podcast is really good overall if you're doing the work or want to do the work, or you think this person could maybe use a little help. Because let's face it, honey, we could always use help sometimes. All right, without further ado, let's get right on into it. Body positivity. What does that have to do with trauma? Or does it have anything to do with it? Oh, yes, it does. Spoiler alert, it does. And it even has something to do with travel. So let me tell you. But first, if you find yourself ashamed, embarrassed, or concerned about the way you look, honey, welcome to the club. Men, women, non-binary. Most of us have body image issues, and it's really not your fault. And I know it seems like, oh, if I just had more willpower, or if I just did this, or if I just, took the Wegovy, or if I just had this, or if I just had a partner that could tell me that they loved me as I am, or if I just had this, then I would be happy, or I would be okay with my body, or if I just lost 10 pounds, or if I just lost 50 pounds, then I would be okay with my body. I promise you, it is not that simple, unfortunately. So this loops into us doing the work on ourselves, right? Because body image is part of self-love. I mean, it's kind of hard to love yourself if you don't like the body that you're in, or if you resent the body that you're in, or if you think you're just plain unattractive or not beautiful. And yes, men are beautiful too. So, all right, we're going to get into that shortly and how to combat that. But first, let's talk a little bit about the background. Trauma can affect your body image. And I'll give you an example. Shaming when you were a child, a parent or attachment figure making you weigh yourself, making fun of your weight, or even making self-deprecating comments about their own weight or stigmatizing weight. This is all childhood trauma, and it all leads to adult body image issues and body shame, unless you've done work to deprogram or work on these things specifically, or if you were in that lucky small percentage of us humans who was raised by secure attachment figures who said, you're beautiful, we love you, and we love ourselves and love our bodies. It's not just, they tell you that you're enough or that your body image is enough and that you're beautiful at any size. It is also, and let me clarify if I'm not making this clear enough, which I'm over-exaggerating for a reason. It is also absolutely imperative that they modeled that behavior. Because anybody who knows anything about child development knows that children model and mimic and repeat behavioral patterns that they see, not what you say to them. So it's not what you say, it's what you do, it's what you model, it's who you are, it's what you believe. Sometimes even unconscious beliefs can transfer to your kids because they'll see you modeling that behavior, whether you say it or not, whether your words match your actions or not. If your words match your actions, then great. But if your words don't match, Kids are going to pick up on your actions, your behavior, your thoughts, your unconscious biases much more than they pick up on what you tell them, which wouldn't it be a perfect world if we could just tell kids and tell ourselves, hey, that's not how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to be super confident and I'm supposed to love myself at any size and no matter what I look like and regardless of what my body image is. Well, obviously that's, a fantasy, so that doesn't actually happen. But there are ways to combat this. So where do we get this shit from? And there's so many sources. And I know you guys know this, and I'm just going to reiterate it for the sake of clarification. Societal programming. Societal programming, especially in the US, thin equals beautiful, which is not true. But we're programmed to believe, and our culture and our society shames you if you aren't a certain size. Then you're bad. Also very untrue. When we're talking about cultural and societal myths, fat equals unhealthy. Also extremely untrue. Health at Every Size. Please read that book, Health at Every Size by Linda Bacon. It's something that is on my list of, I think, every adult human being who's capable of reading, and by reading I mean audiobook or physical book, whatever your preference is, should read this book. This should be a required reading to be a grown-ass adult in any country. Like, it's just something that is so critical because we're taught growing up in the US specifically, but in other countries as well, in the UK, in Australia, in a lot of other countries. I'm just giving examples that I know personally, that thin equals healthy and thin equals beautiful. And that's just not fucking true. Like, even if you can logically tell yourself that's not true, it's hard to believe that. So I put a whole bunch of scholarly articles and empirical data in the show notes. Go look it up. I swear it's not just me. The myths that health is determined by your BMI. Oh my God, I'm going to get into BMI shortly. But so childhood shaming, fat stigmatizing, fat phobic society, cultural and societal messages. I mean, there's so many areas that we are getting these messages from pretty much from birth, from verbalization, even pre-verbal. Like, babies can understand a lot before they can actually speak, or so says childhood development. And I'm probably even forgetting some. These equate to body image issues. They equate to them not being your fault. So can I just say that again? This is not your fault. And, without a caveat to that, and it is still our job to reprogram ourselves, reprogram our brains, rewire those neural pathways, and redesign our own image of what's healthy and beautiful. And I'll give you a little hint, a little spoiler, all bodies are beautiful. And a lot of people that are big are healthy. Just because you're a size 26 doesn't mean you're unhealthy. All right, let's get into the BMI. I touched on that for a second, and I can't wait to tell you guys about this. If you haven't read that book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, definitely read that one. Start with Health at Every Size. It is my key go-to number one recommendation for body image positivity because it will start to shift your perspective. Like, it's debunking all the bullshit, including the BMI, and how we measure health, especially in the US, but in other countries as well, where Australia uses the BMI and similar measures to the United States, and so do other countries. So the BMI, let's get back down this rabbit hole. The BMI is utter bullshit. Let's just be clear. And I'm going to tell you why. So it was invented originally by a Belgian mathematician and astronomer. Yeah. Did I say that right? Yeah. A mathematician and astronomer. Who the fuck thought that was a good idea? Did I mention when? 200 years ago. Not 20, not 10, not even 50 years ago. 200 years ago, as a quick and easy way to measure the general population's obesity rate. And scientifically, it is completely fucking nonsense. If you really want to look at fat as a measure of obesity, we would need to factor in waist size and other factors, which is our waist is a chronic place of excess fat storage, typically, not always. And even that isn't a good measure because we all know the body types vary. Sometimes we see people with tiny little flat waist, big, butt, big boobs, or guys, thinner waist, thick thighs, big bulky arms. I mean, with fat or muscle or whatever. So, oh, I'm going to get further down the BMI rabbit hole. Don't worry. The formula itself assumes little muscle mass and a high body fat percentage. It assumes that. It factors in that everybody has a BMI that includes very little muscle and a whole lot of body fat. And that's why like the range of healthy is like 25, which actually has a much higher mortality rate than the obese quote category, and the underweight category has the highest mortality rate. But even the normal, the quote normal, I'm just being very clear that this is quote normal section of the BMI has a higher mortality rate than somebody who is classified as obese. Yeah, I mean, how fucking stupid. It's just nonsense. So the math is utterly ridiculous. It doesn't account for muscle. It doesn't account for bone density, bone mass. It doesn't account for different body sizes. It doesn't account for pretty much anything because, right, all bodies are built exactly the same, right? Right, yeah, that totally makes sense. There's no reason or excuse for this still being taught in medical school, yet it is. If your doctor, your general practitioner, thinks the BMI is a good measure of health, I'm going to refer you back to episode 4 of How to Find a Good Therapist, but this case, How to Find a Good Doctor. Dump that bitch, he or she. I mean, in general, like, they gotta go because they're not doing the work and they haven't looked outside of the confines of what they were taught in medical school, which is ridiculous to question the logic behind that, even though they were likely taught, hey, this was developed by a Belgian astronomer 200 years ago. Oh, by the way, it was also implemented into the World Health Organization by a lobbyist panel of 7 weight loss representatives on a panel of 9. Wait a minute, does that make sense? Does that seem a little bit biased to you? That seems a little bit biased to me, but what do I know? This is still being taught with scientific and government authority, at least in the US, and I hope to hell it isn't in other countries because hopefully there's a little bit more progressive thinking going on in other countries. There's no way in hell it should have either been taught or continue being taught. It's like the equivalent of saying you're healthier if you're shorter than tall people. Wait, what? Yeah. And that doesn't make sense because there's no logic in what I just said, because there's no logic in the fucking BMI. It was never even intended to be a measure of health. Is that some obvious shit or is that some obvious shit? Okay, so I'm going to try not to get too far down this rabbit hole, but BMI is such a big deal in the US specifically, and so I want to be thorough in my assessment, and I have done the research and the legwork and the empirical data and the articles and the reading of this. It's not just me, I promise you. Not that you guys don't trust me at this point anyway, but I'm just saying my data comes from usually pretty legit places, and I do put references in the show notes. Okay, I'm going to get off my BMI high horse shortly, but I just want to say a couple last things. Professional athletes, we're talking Serena Williams, Kobe Bryant, professional fucking athletes are considered obese under the BMI. I mean, I think that's like just a poignant example of how fucking stupid this thing really is. So knowing what we know about fat, obesity, and the BMI being utter bullshit, I think it's unethical to be continuing to use this, let alone having it taught in medical school. But again, don't take my word for it. Reference the show notes and all the articles I put in there, which are just some of the evidence. All right, I will get off my BMI high horse. I think you guys get the point at this point. BMI, by the way, stands for Body Mass Index, and it also stands for bullshit. Yeah, okay, all right, I'll shut up now. So health is so much more about how you feel internally and your mental health, which if you've listened to episodes prior to this, you get my point at this point, which your mental health dramatically affects your physical health. And it's so much more important, and it's so much about how you feel versus how you look. And we can still get hung up on our body shame issues, our body image issues, and they can cause us to shame spiral. They can cause us to become physically ill. They can cause us to have all kinds of physical manifestation of ailments, right? So just like any other shame or mental health issue, it can manifest in a physical way in your body. So let's talk about judgment. When you're judging your body, you're sometimes judging other people's bodies, but not always. But when we are judging other people's bodies, That is a result of your own insecurities. We don't judge people in areas that we don't feel shame. And that applies to any variation of judgment, not just body image, but specifically for this topic, for this episode, body image. When you're looking at the size 26 girl, and size is relative, but whatever, when you're looking at the, person that you deem morbidly obese or whatever fat, whatever category you want to label it as, and you say that's unattractive or that's disgusting or that's repulsive or repellent or I would never or whatever, you have body image issues yourself. Let's look in the mirror. Let's be honest. Let's take stock and let's say, whoa, that means I got some shit to do. That means I got some work to do. It means I need to work on my own body image, because we just don't judge other people in areas we don't feel shame. It just doesn't happen. Look up the research. I promise you it's there. But Brene Brown specifically, as if I could avoid mentioning her name in any episode. Yeah, there's probably one episode or two that I haven't mentioned her name, but it's got to be a rarity at this point. So she's done the 20 years, 30 years, however many years, decades of grounded theory research. We do not have judgment in areas of other people where we don't feel shame. It just doesn't exist. Body dysmorphia. We're going to talk about that for a minute since we've gone down the judgment rabbit hole. What does that mean? So body dysmorphia is like a mental health condition, which I used to think it was like seeing yourself differently, but it's really when you can't stop thinking about one or more like flaws or things that you don't like in your appearance. And it can be something that appears minor to others or doesn't even get noticed by others. But you are ashamed or embarrassed or anxious or all of the above, and you may even avoid social situations because of it, which is a loosely translated Mayo Clinic definition. So body dysmorphia is another issue that we can combat by doing the work on ourselves and working on our body positivity issues. And I've got lots of reading recs for you in this episode. The first two I mentioned were Health at Every Size, the book Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily Lee and Amelia Nagoski. Those are two great ones. Burnout has a section like on body positivity, but the whole book isn't necessarily about that. I think that book is great overall, but it has more than one section. It's got a whole, they call it the bikini industrial complex, which is basically like the whole programming of what you were supposed to look like and supposed to eat and supposed to wear, and like the whole Barbie diatribe movie section. If you haven't seen that, just go look up the Barbie speech by America Ferrera on YouTube, and I'm sure it'll come up. Body dysmorphia can contribute to our body shame and body image issues. And not the cure, but the remedy, I guess, the way to combat these things is all the same. And I'm going to get to that a little bit later after I discuss what body positivity has to do with travel. So speaking of which, let's delve into that. What does body positivity have to do with travel? Why are those two related? So I mentioned this in a Facebook reel or a post or something. I don't know. But not everybody sees, the Facebook page, which is the You Make It Happen Facebook page. Or there's also a Travel and Trauma Insiders group, which you have to request to be a part of because it's a private group on Facebook, that I occasionally post like little snippets and future clips and just exciting little tidbits about upcoming episodes. I'm not as religious posting on that as I am on TikTok and Instagram. So if you really want to follow along with the podcast and with my mental health reels, follow along at missy.traveler on TikTok and Missy the Traveler on Instagram. So how does body positivity relate to travel? If you aren't comfortable in your own body, how comfortable are you going to be traveling? Especially if you're traveling solo. So if you have a partner or a friend, hopefully that person is supportive and cares about you. If not, what the fuck are you traveling with them? But anyway, if you're traveling solo, that makes it a little bit harder, right? But on the flip side of that, if you are loving your body, if you are appreciating and dare I say worshiping, how much more pleasurable does that make travel? The answer is infinitely. Spoiler, it's infinitely. It makes travel infinitely more pleasurable. And I have gotten the question on social media, how can I travel if I hate my body? My lovelies, please do some work do the work, of course, but specifically for body image and body positivity, do some work not to hate your body. Because I can tell you until the sun comes up, your body is beautiful. It is beautiful, regardless of what jiggles, regardless of what has extra layers of fat, regardless of what has a deformation or a scar. This is beautiful because it's your body. It makes it automatically beautiful. That belief is internal, though. You have to know that you're beautiful. I can tell you all day long. It doesn't mean shit until you feel that. And travel probably won't be as pleasurable as it could be. And it could still be fun. Like, don't get me wrong. I traveled when I hated my body, but I didn't enjoy it as much. And I look back at when I took my first international trip at 16, and I was probably 340, 330 pounds, something, big and uncomfortable, and hating myself and hating my body and having no self-esteem and no self-respect. And I look back and I'm like, oh, I'm always trying to hide in the back of a picture, and I'm trying to cover up my fat, and I can't take my, long sleeve shirt off, even though I'm hot and sticky and uncomfortable because I don't want anybody to see my upper arms. And wow, yeah, that puts a damper on travel. And it put a damper on my whole enjoyment of each experience because I was always so concerned with what I looked like and how I was being perceived by other people, because I know I was huge. And you kind of stick out as huge in Europe because morbidly obese, like super fat. I can't remember what book called it that. Maybe it was Health at Every Size. Maybe it was Intuitive Eating. I don't know. One of the books called it that, like super fat or something like that. They had a special name for it, but honey, that was me. And it was just something that contributed to a less than pleasurable experience of the trip. I also knew that I couldn't physically do as many things because I was just carrying a lot more weight. Like, there was stairs up to this lookout in Nice, and I made it to the top eventually. My best friend and I were on this trip together, and we were both about the same size. We were just, huge little butterballs of teenage angst and misery and hormones and self-deprecating humor and self-loathing as, we were teenagers. I don't know. She probably hated herself a lot less than I hated myself. Maybe, who knows? Maybe not. Both of our mental healths were pretty bad at that time, but we struggled when we got to the top of that lookout and that platform. And it was such an achievement and accomplishment by the time we got up there. And the view was just stunning. I think it was the best view in all of France that we had enjoyed thus far on the trip. And so it was well worth it. But man, I was dripping sweat, and every other student's passing us. And we are just hobbling up these, 17 flights, 15 flights roughly of stairs, cobblestone type stairs that are not exactly evenly measured flights, but you know what I mean? But it was worth it. We made it up there, and it was an accomplishment because we made it. All the skinny kids, yeah, whatever. They could make it just fine. And then I went back years later after I had lost a lot of weight and done a lot of diet and exercise and lost weight in unhealthy ways and in healthy ways. I lost weight healthy for the most part, gym, diet, and exercise. And then sometimes I starved myself, which was not healthy. And that's when the weight would always come back on and then some. Like, let's be clear, there are healthier ways to lose weight than others if you truly want to lose weight. Also, this is gonna segue. I know this sounds like a squirrel topic, and it is a little bit, but this is just gonna segue perfectly. Two things can be true at once. You can love yourself the way you are, love your body, appreciate it, be happy with your size, and still want to lose weight. And that's okay. This episode, I'm focusing on body image, so we're not going to focus on losing weight because we're going to talk about the fact that you are beautiful at whatever size you're at, or handsome, whatever term you want to use, and that you are lovely just the way you are. And that paradox can be true as well. You can be happy. Like, this is the frame of mind that I am in at the moment. I am very happy and think that I'm beautiful and have done so much body image work and body positivity. And I also appreciate it when I fit into an airplane seat a little bit better, because society is designed around these narrow-minded constructs of who should fit into what and what size people should be. And airplane seats are built for people that are smaller, and they're not built for the average size US citizen, which I think for women is like a size 16. that doesn't fit all that comfortably into an airplane seat. Like, yeah. So two things can be true, and they can sound paradoxical, and they can still be true. Let's just keep that in mind. But for now, we're not going to worry about the paradox, and we're going to focus on loving ourselves in our current condition, not when we lose 10 pounds, not when we get that job, not when she agrees to go out with us, not when he proposes, not when you find a healthy relationship or whatever, not when the hot guy notices you, but right now. And you are worthy of love just as you are. In case nobody's told you that today, Missy the Traveler is here to tell you, you are fucking worthy of love. Don't forget it. Okay, that sounded kind of harsh. You are worthy. You are worthy of all the good things. You are deserving of love. You are deserving of support and kindness and gentleness to yourself. So I've mentioned in a previous episode about self-compassion, and the reading rec for that is Kristen Neff's book on self-compassion. Excellent, excellent read. And it applies to body image, but it's not specific about body image, but it applies. Health at every size is just my go-to. And then intuitive eating, and another rec coming at you, Happy Fat. Sophie Hagen, Happy Fat. Great read. It will also shift your perspective on what fat looks like. And she's hilarious. And she's good to follow on social media because she is a fat activist, body positive. I just love her. If you want to follow somebody else on social media that's a fat activist and body positive, Lizzo, world famous singer, and just gorgeous. And routinely posts pictures and videos with no filters, very revealing, and she's fat. And I love it because she's beautiful. And it's not about, oh, she's beautiful and she's fat, or, oh, she's beautiful because she's fat. She's just beautiful. She's just a beautiful human being, period. So let's get into how do we combat the body image epidemic. Start with those reading recs. If that doesn't help, or if you just won't read them, audiobooks are books, people. Audiobooks are books. Fucking read. Anyway, therapist. A good, validating, body image affirming therapist who's also doing the work, or has at least done the work. They don't need to love their body. That's like in episode 4, we go over the prerequisites or, good ideas, nice to have lists, and deal breakers for finding a therapist. They don't need to have gotten to the point where they've done so much body positivity work that they love themselves and will walk down the street naked if that was socially acceptable. As great as that sounds, that's not realistic necessarily, because we all have body image issues to some degree. We all have our insecurities. But somebody who is affirming and knows what it looks like to help their clients get body positive issues and work on those things, that's what you need. So therapy is not an option. I'm all for alternates. Like I get that therapy is not always an option. So like I said, follow those body positivity pages on social media. Follow Louise Ann. She's from episode 10, louise.ann.coaching on all of her social media. She is huge into body positivity and just, self-love in general. Do not keep contacting or subjecting yourself to body image critical parent or other relationship that you have. Do surround yourself with uplifting phrases, affirmations, people, friends, family, chosen family, pets, because pets love you no matter what you look like. That's unconditional love right there. And we all need more of that in our life if you're able to have pets. Follow body positive movements and pages on social media. If you use social media, work on loving yourself by looking at yourself in the mirror and telling the parts that you were ashamed of or you were formerly ashamed of that you love them. Now, stick with me here. I know that sounds a little bit crazy. It may sound like that, but it can really shift your mindset. And sometimes it takes practice. Sometimes it takes, more than one affirmation or more than one time. But the more you speak to yourself in a kind way and you talk to your inner parts, inner child, as well as your exterior parts, like tell your tummy, you're sorry that you've been mean to it. I'm sorry that I squished you as shapewear and stuffed you into miserably tight tummy control panels. Tell your upper arms that you love them, no matter how much you think you hate them. Apologize to your body for being abusive to it, whatever you did or have done, because a lot of us are guilty of that. And if you're not, fucking awesome. Good for you. I love it. Send me a message and say, nope, never did that. I'm going to tell you all about it, Missy. Never gone there. Cool. I am thrilled for you. And tell me all about your journey. Like, tell me about that. Tell me about your upbringing and why you never shamed yourself. I love that. But if you are in the much larger group who has shamed themselves or abused their body by shoving it into uncomfortable clothes or hiding it or whatever, tell those parts of you that you're sorry and that you love them. So Sophie Hagen does this in her book, Happy Fat. That's where I've got this concept because I loved it and I'm borrowing it. She talks about tummies specifically and about how you go, look at your tummy in the mirror or just look, down at your tummy and rub your tummy, put your hands on your tummy and tell your tummy you're sorry. Talk to yourself like your best friend. Talk to yourself like somebody you truly, deeply love and care about. Extend yourself that grace, compassion, and kindness. And then, as it concerns body positivity, we're going to focus that in on those parts that you used to hate. We're going to work on not hating them anymore. And this is how we're going to do that. We're going to talk kindly to them. And we're going to put our hands on our tummy. And if you're not driving, or if you can, do this right now. Especially your tummy. Just bear with me. Put your hands on your tummy. I'm doing it right now. My hands are on my tummy. And I'm saying to my tummy, I am sorry and I love you. I love you. I am sorry I was mean to you before. I am sorry I shoved you into uncomfortable pants and tried to hide you. And even if you're not ready to not hide the tummy from the public, we're going to tell the tummy, we love you. You're fat. I've got plenty of fat around my tummy, just a side note. And I love you just as you are. I love you. And do this with any body part that you don't like or loathe or hate or whatever. So for me, it used to be my upper arms, even more than my tummy, my upper arms. I was so embarrassed by my upper arms because my grandmother and my mother have these genetically flabby upper arms, even disproportionate to the rest of my body. So it makes me look particularly heavier than I actually am. I have done enough work at this point where I have talked to the upper arm flab and said, you used to be unsightly to me and I used to hate you. And now I've just come to appreciate that you're part of all of me. And no matter how many push-ups or tricep dips or whatever I did, that just made my arms stronger, but it didn't make the fat go away. And I just had to learn to love this part of me, even if it was a part that I used to think was so unsightly and unattractive. So tell that part how sorry you are for being abusive to it, if you were, or for just not loving it. Whether it's your thighs, your arms, your belly, your boobs, your chest, your back, your butt, whatever part that didn't deserve that punishment. And neither do you. Because shaming and blaming and guilting yourself probably isn't working for your body image so far. Is that making it better? I didn't think so. So let's try something different. Let's tell our bits that we love them, just like we love our inner child who's still healing and still struggling to trust us again. That is if you've started the inner child work, which I hope you have. Let us tell these parts that we love and care for them. Even if you don't mean it, which you're probably not going to mean it at first, especially if this is new to you, especially if you've struggled with body image or body shame, like that's going to be awkward and uncomfortable. But the more you do this, or the more you practice self-kindness and self-compassion and loving yourself and apologizing to your body and your inner child or whomever you're working on your issues with, the easier it will get and the more you will believe it. So again, that's why I said bear with me for this exercise, because it may feel a little bit awkward at first. And by a little bit, I mean really fucking awkward. I hope you've started to shift your perspective just a little bit on what self-love can look like as it relates to body image and body positivity. And yes, this is an episode fully on body positivity and shame and how that, can be a result of our trauma. But I didn't forget those travel tips. And I know there's some guest episodes where we don't quite get to travel tips. We talk about travel and there's some where we don't quite get into the deets of the travel tips, but that doesn't mean that I forget them. And so I will include a few extra in this episode for y'all because I love you. And I hope that you love yourself as well. All right, travel tip number 1, buy airfare on a Tuesday evening and it's statistically the cheapest, lowest time. I've also looked on Wednesdays, and sometimes it's the same price, but statistically, Tuesday evenings are the best. Travel tip number 2. If you're buying airfare to Europe, try to purchase as far in advance as you can. It's usually being the caveat there, cheaper to purchase it further out. Obviously, set an airfare, Google flight alert, and keep an eye on it, especially if you haven't purchased it, or if you can cancel your ticket and get airline credit and then rebook. Keep that flight alert on, even if you've purchased it, just in case it goes down. Because if it goes down by a couple $100 and the ticket cancellation fee is $50, yeah, I'll settle in for a 90-minute call with whatever airline to pay the $50 fee and get $200 difference back, because that's, just do the math. That's worth it, right? Travel tip number 3, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Statistically, these are the cheapest days to actually fly out. Tuesday, again, don't ask me why it's all on Tuesdays. Tuesdays being usually the cheapest significantly to fly out. Sometimes I fly on Wednesday or Friday, and it seems to be the same price. Just look at the map, look at the Google Flights, which I've given you guys that tip before. Look at Google Flights and see which day to leave. Look at the price graph. Do all the things that can save you money. Travel tip number 4, layovers can actually save you quite a bit of money. So let's say you want to go to Stockholm. I'm just going to use that as an example because it's a place that I fly into semi-frequently. And I noticed that round trip airfare to Stockholm is $900. Whew, no, I'm good. I'm flying from Seattle. That's a bit out of my budget. I'm the low budget traveler, remember? So $900, no, not going to do that. But let's say I can see, looks like on the world map here that round trip airfare to Geneva is only $450 or $500 or whatever, or Dublin or London or wherever. Well, let me search and see how much is a flight from Geneva to Stockholm or to wherever you want to go. And I'm using Europe as an example because it's the continent I'm most familiar with travel, because it's the place I've done the most travel. So find that layover flight, do the world search and just say go anywhere, and Google Flights will let you do this. You can also use Kayak. I kind of like to cross-reference because they have different ways of searching. So I like to use both if you've got the time. And if you're trying to save money, make the time, because this is how you're going to save money. Doing the research, doing the legwork, making the time, booking the shit in advance as far as you possibly can. So Google Flights lets you search by anywhere in the world. And so you can see, from these dates to these dates, or this week, or this 2 weeks, or this month, or whenever you want to go, it'll let you search by different parameters and time frames. Looks like this is only $500 round trip. Ooh, well, that's a hell of a lot cheaper than the $900. So it also comes with an added bonus. Unless you're on strict business plans and you got to get to Stockholm or you got to get to London or wherever. And maybe in that case, budget traveling is not what's going to work for you because you have rigid plans, rigid dates. You need to get from point A to point B in a certain time, and you can't make any stops along the way. Okay, not travel for leisure. So I'm mostly talking about travel for leisure. But this still applies. You can look at the flexible dates and see if you can get a better deal. Like if you leave on Wednesday versus leaving on Tuesday or vice versa. So if you have the time, if you have the flexibility, and then it gives you the added bonus, like I was saying and got derailed, as I do, then you get to stop somewhere else too. Go to Geneva. Oh, I've never been to Geneva. Well, let's go explore Geneva for a day or two because I'm going to be jet lagged by the time I get there. Let's go there and rest. And maybe you get a layover in England. Maybe you get a layover somewhere else. Maybe you get a 12, 24-hour layover. Oh, free country to explore, or free city, or whatever. Plus, you just got this awesome trip to not your destination, and then you hop a little Ryanair flight, EasyJet flight, Air Baltic, whatever. I haven't flown with Air Baltic, so I can't say if I like them or not. I've flown with EasyJet and Ryanair, and they're cheap as shit, but they do a good job. Also, here's your 5th travel tip of the day, a little extra bonus for you. Lower your expectations if you're traveling with low budget airlines, or just know what to expect. Just know what you get, what you pay for. You're traveling with a low budget airline. You know you're going to pay for every extra little thing, including your baggage, including anything, including picking seats, including priority boarding. You're going to pay for every extra little thing. But, we like big butts, and we cannot lie. These airlines are usually so affordable that it really doesn't make a huge dent in the budget to pay for the priority boarding, to pay for the carry-on bag. I think I've paid, I think the last flight I set up was around $60, including the carry-on bag and priority boarding. That's still a damn good deal. And I think it was like Oslo to Helsinki. It's going to be a trip later on next year. So there you have it. 5 travel tips I have graced y'all with, because there are some episodes I don't get to a whole lot of travel tips because they're guest episodes. And I know that you guys appreciate the guest episodes and the solo episodes, which is just so flattering for me. Like, again, I just want to say thank you, because it's so nice to hear that you actually appreciate just me talking. And sometimes I'm like, oh no, they've got to hear from other people. But no, y'all actually appreciate me, which is so wonderful to hear. And the feedback that I've gotten on how people are improving their mental health from this podcast, just from me, is just, it's so, I don't know another word other than gratifying, validating. Like it's a little ego fluffing, not gonna lie. It's a little ego fluffing. And I love it. And I love y'all. So thank you for showing up as your authentic selves in everyday life, in every situation that you possibly can. I am trying to do the same every day. And just remember, we're always just doing the best that we can. We're doing the best that we can. Brene Brown has the story about doing the best that you can. I'll have to tell you guys in another episode because I've rambled on long enough. But we're doing our best as human beings for the most part, most of the time. And try to remember to give grace and compassion, not only to other people, but also to yourself, because you're doing your best too. Just like that person that is tailgating you and driving like an asshole, that actually is their best. They don't have the capacity to do any better in that moment. And if they did, let's hope that they would. So, as always, work your shit out, not on other people. Please share the podcast with your friends, anybody that you could think would appreciate it or think would like it or could use the information. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. And for doing the work, I am so fucking proud of you. Until next time.